Será que via Nessi, o monstro marinho do famoso Lago Ness? Neste vídeo vamos fazer um tour pelas terras altas escocesas e ver paisagens de cortar a respiração.
E como é que é, pessoal? Gonçalo Carvalho na área. Vamos fazer um tour pela Escócia neste autocarro, Discover Scotland Tours. É uma carrinha que leva 16 pessoas, portanto é super privado. Tem ali o mapa da Escócia, como podem ver. Vai ser top, vocês vão gostar, portanto já sabem, rebentar com o botão do like.
Até logo Edimburgo, a primeira paragem é Calendar.
Has anybody been to the castle so far?
Yesterday.
Oh, yesterday.
Not yet.
And it's at that point I realised that the person that arrived yesterday is the one that went yesterday. Really cramming in as much as they can.
Actually, yeah, we came yesterday.
Good effort though. Usually when I go on holiday I decide to just sit about and laze at the sun, you know, drink a few.
Começa aqui em Edimburgo e depois vamos até Calendar, depois até Glencoe, depois ao Forte Augustus, que basicamente é onde fica o Lago Ness. Voltamos para o outro lado por Piltorch e por fim regressamos a Edimburgo no final do dia. Acho que vai ser muito fixe, pois não só as vistas que vamos ter.
With my accent it sounds like I'm saying Princess Street. I understand that, so let me just clarify. It's plural for prince. As you can see to the right we've got the relatively new tram network. I say relatively new because Edinburgh did have a tram system back in the 1950s and we removed it, scrapped the idea because we believed the motor car was more efficient to get into the city. Oh, how wrong were they then, eh? As you can see on the left hand side we have the gorgeous, but not as good, I'll just say that to you, Edinburgh Castle. Again, I live in Stirling, so I'm going to be biased here. Stirling Castle's better. And there's a little bit of a friendly rivalry between the two people that operate the two castles, but you'll see the reason why people sort of have a little bit of a competition between the two when we get into Stirling. So a few of you have been into the castle. Did you see St Margaret's Chapel? Yes. It's a lovely wee chapel, isn't it? It's tiny. It's about half the size of the bus. Now that sits on top of a giant big outcropping of rock. It's igneous rock, so we're looking about 300 million years ago. It's now an extinct volcano.
Do lado direito fica a cidade nova. Do lado esquerdo fica a cidade antiga.
Now if you have a wee look above the Johnny Walker, you'll see a clock tower on the corner. Before mobile phones and the fantastic days of being able to communicate with each other at any time, that was actually a very popular lovers meeting spot. Meet you under the clock. I'm 31 folks, so this was before my time. Edinburgh city is quite it's quite an affluent city in Scotland. A lot of wealth. You can usually tell by the gorgeous buildings and then the absolutely stunning cars that sit outside them as well. Example A, the lovely Range Rover that just drove up that alleyway. I'm sure if we all club together we'll be able to purchase an apartment. It's about 500,000 a year rental for the main building. On the left hand side we've got Murrayfield Stadium, the home of Scottish rugby. Any rugby fans?
No.
Well, that was good, that one, wasn't it? Anyway, we came second in the Six Nation Championship. But not only is it a sporting venue, it's also an entertainment venue. Taylor Swift's going to be there in the summer. Alright, we've not got any Swiftie fans either. Did somebody say who?
Yeah.
Right, out the bus. So yeah, so big names, 66,000 in capacity, which I know for some of the Americans on board that is like, you know, a private venue. So I know your stadiums are like crazy. Just coming up here on the right hand side, we've got Edinburgh Zoo, and there's a few wee things I'm going to mention to that we did just say goodbye to our giant pandas from China. The reason why they were here is part of a breeding programme. I'm sure a few people are aware of it because there was pandas all over the world to try and help China with its breeding programme, but sadly it's not been too great. The pandas did not find Edinburgh very romantic because we didn't end up with any panda babies. But there's a little bit of a tradition there as well. It's called the Penguin March, and they take all the penguins out of their pen, encouraged with fish of course, and they do a little march around the zoo.
O condutor agora colocou música típica escocesa de um cantor de Edimburgo e vamos ouvir a música tradicional que eu estou a adorar, acho que é muito bacana mesmo, e vamos ver estas vistas da Escócia, caminho de Calendar, que vai ser a nossa primeira paragem do dia.
Most of the Kings and Queens operated from either Edinburgh or Stirling Castle, just because they were main fortresses. Now, you'll probably hear me say Loch already because I was talking about Loch Ness. Loch is just Scots Gaelic, so there's a little bit of the language you can learn. It's Scots Gaelic for lake. For example, everybody thinks they're wee lovely Tinkerbell creatures, you know. Fairies in Scotland are evil little creatures. They usually have the power to give you nightmares, you know, not lovely dreams, but give you nightmares. Now kelpies are also the very same, because the story goes that parents would tell these stories of the water horses to scare kids away from Scotland's dangerous coastal ways. So if a little child who probably didn't know how to swim back then got trapped in it, it would be easily death as the option. So anyway, to discourage kids from going anywhere near Scotland's dangerous coastal ways and also rivers, parents would tell kids to stay away from lonely white horses in fields. And there's a reason for that. Alright, does anybody know of any other gorgeous white horses in Scottish mythology? Spot on. So that was the thing. Kelpies were clever. They knew that kids couldn't resist jumping on white horses because it's very similar to the look of a lovely unicorn, isn't it? I'm sure if there's any horse fans in here, they will be like, oh yeah, white horses are gorgeous, everybody loves them. And they also love black horses as well, you know, it's like a very solid colour, you know, people think that's very unique. And kids saw that as well. So parents would tell their kids, don't jump on the backs of these lonely white horses. The water horses, kelpies, had the ability to shapeshift. They transitioned into these white horses to lure kids onto their backs. But once the kids were on their backs, they'd lock them in, they couldn't get them off. They'd take them to the nearest water source, to the deepest point, drown them and feed on their souls. How nice would that be to the kids, telling them that before bed, eh? That's like filling them up with sugar before you send them off to bed at 8 o'clock at night, and they'd never sleep. And thankfully I wasn't told that as a child, because I'm quite a keen kayaker. I do a lot of whitewater kayaking, and if I was told that as a kid, I'd be absolutely petrified of the water. I'm already scared of water. We'll actually get a good view of some of the sections, the runs of river that I kayak when we leave Callander. It's quite a popular kayaking spot just because it's so far down. And then to the right, you'll see Stirling Castle, the best castle in Scotland. You guys can decide. But you can see it's very similar to Edinburgh, isn't it? It sits on a big outcropping of rock, and it's the exact same principle. It's igneous rock. It is an extinct volcano. That's Blair Drummond Castle. Now, Blair Drummond Castle isn't a castle, but it became very fashionable for people to name their gorgeous, big, wealthy manors castles. This area here, like you see, this big piece of water, that's the River Teith. Typically, there's a bit of a trickle just above the water, perfect for salmon, for fishing anyway, because you're trying to mimic a fly when you're flying, and it's maybe nice calm trickle waters, and so you're able to spot the salmon where they're coming out, trying to eat the flies. But when it's like this, it's a little bit harder because it's just too much water. So that's when this river started changes its identity to being for water sports, such as whitewater kayaking. But yeah, there's no such thing as private property. People have property, they own it, but you can essentially walk through this field without any problems, provided that you're looking after the environment. There's a famous saying, everybody might have heard this: leave nothing but footprints, take nothing but photographs. You know, just being kind to the wildlife, and that's the general basis of the rules. So this is us just coming into Callander, folks. Alright, boundary between the Highlands and the Lowlands. So we're still Lowlanders. Once we crest into those hills, we'll be Highlanders. Now this big hill here to the left, that you can't see his summit because he's hidden by the trees, he's known as Ben Ledy. But not as in Ben, that's his name. Ben just means mountainous. A lot of our hills have Ben at the beginning of them. The language is quite good, the Scots Gaelic language. It's designed to help people given directions in the language.
Esta é a estrada principal de Callander.
Bem, malta, chegámos oficialmente a Callander, aqui está a nossa carrinha. E agora vou explorar a cidade, tenho meia hora para ver a rua principal e ver as lojas. Eu vou fazer uma tour de barco no Lago Ness, é 19 libras. Depois de um café, de estarmos revitalizados, eis que vamos de volta à carrinha. Adeus Callander, gostei imenso de conhecer. É hora de vermos o resto da Escócia.
I can see that the weather's getting a little bit better, so whoever's pulling strings or making phone calls, can you keep doing it? I'm going to point out a gorgeous waterfall. It's the Lenny Falls, and when I'm kayaking, this is the popular spot that everybody wants to hang out and sort of do a run of the waterfall. I have done this waterfall sometimes successfully, but mostly unsuccessfully. I am by no stretch of the means good at kayaking. I just enjoy it, I think it's fun. But you can see all the white water here, it's good. It's a good laugh. And it's quite a safe spot, despite what you might think, because there's quite a large group of people and they're all watching each other, and there's safety mechanisms like ropes being pulled across the surface of the water that exits with a team of people either side on the bank to pull you back over, which is quite nice. And you'll look at that and go, Kyle, you're absolutely off your head.
Aqui fica as cascatas Lenny Falls. Uau!
Wow. Ooh. Ah. So yeah, it's a good fun. Me and my father do it. We've been doing it now for about 5-6 years. And Lubnaig is Scots Gaelic for crooked. So it's the crooked loch. Lovely wee swans there. Is that a little bit of sunshine?
Viram.
Thank you, Scotland.
E logo significa lago em escocês.
And you'll see when we come up to this bend here, look to the left, you'll see a absolutely fantastic view of Loch Lubnaig. Wow. Just me then.
Wow.
You'll see that the loch has actually got a bit of a dog leg. It shoots up this way and then shoots off to the left. And that's what they're referencing, crooked. It's weird because we've got quite a lot of crooked lochs in Scotland, but they must have just thought this one was more crooked than the rest. But you'll see occasionally people walking. It's a lovely walk because Mother Nature doesn't create straight lines. Whatever decides to happen, she'll just make it that way. And it'll just be very sporadical and random. And typically our woodlands in Scotland would look like what we've got here on the left hand side. Different species of trees, larch, beech, birch, juniper, hazel, all of these different trees. It would just be an amalgamation of them all. And they would be little pocket sizes, and it would be these kind of heights of trees as well. Occasionally we had some pine trees coming up here on your left hand side in a wee moment. It's called the Glen Ogle Viaduct, another piece of Victorian engineering. There's a few filming locations that I'll point out for you guys. Since there's a few Harry Potter fans on, I'll point out these things. Now I want you to look up this hillside on the left hand. See the trees? Don't worry, I'm not going on about trees, don't worry, I know. But the trees there, you see how they've actually got a bit of a purple tinge, or a little bit of a maroon tinge to them. And they actually surround the old railway line that used to cut through here. So there's a little similar one to the Glenfinnan Viaduct. The Glenfinnan one is much, much larger. That actually turns at the head of a glen and turns back on itself to the opposite end, whereas this one just runs along one side of it. Have a look at the terrain though. This is what the Victorians were doing. The reason why they scrapped it is because of a financial study that they did. They realised there wasn't enough foot traffic, but also look at the hills. Scotland is just so wet that those big boulders could just roll down and take out a steam train, no bother. So that was one of the reasons why they scrapped it. Not enough people using it.
Olhem ali neve. Conseguimos ver neve ali ao fundo, na montanha.
This is about as far north as the Romans got. It sort of holds the same kind of respect as people who climb Everest. It's a huge achievement because they're all over Scotland, and some places are really difficult to get to. One of them's called the Inaccessible Pinnacle. I mean, that really explains how difficult that is, you know. But it's not one of those ironic things. It's really difficult to climb. I don't speak Scottish Gaelic, sadly I'm one of the ones that don't speak it. And it's a bit of a shame. I feel like I rob people when I'm tour guiding and I don't speak my mother tongue. But that's just down to our educational system. But the Scottish Government have done a lot to try and get involved with that. They've tried to encourage the speaking of it. In schools they've now got that in their curricular system. It's mandatory, you've got to take a lesson in it. And then also road signs have got that language inclusive in it as well. In fact, there's a wee thing that's similar to Switzerland. You guys have got 4 languages. One of them's very similar. It's like a amalgamation of German, French and Italian, is that right? Now just look to the left, you'll see the sign that was mentioned earlier on. It's got Scots Gaelic in yellow and the white writing is in English. That's because we're starting to experience people who would speak that language firsthand. Like I said, I don't speak the language fluently, unfortunately, but I can understand some words. I'll introduce you to a few of them. These big hills that we have here on the right hand side, folks, they are colloquially known as the Weeping Hills, because when Scotland gets a little bit of rain, they turn into beautiful waterfalls and it looks like the hills are crying. Quite melancholic in it. About 66,000 square kilometres is owned by a Saudi Arabian sheikh called Prince Mohammed. Don't ask me why he owns it, because people have asked me and I've tried researching it and there's no answer. Google has given me 0 results. The closest I came to figuring out why he purchased it is that he is quite into conservation, which he is, there's evidence for that. But also the other thing that I could find was that Scotland had a very large trade deal done with Saudi Arabia for oil, and he was given quite a significant discount in my opinion, because it cost him 2.2 billion to purchase that land. And he's, like I said, his major sort of attributes to the area are conservation, but it's not to keep them off the road, to keep them out of the wooded pen there, because as I said, deer are savages and they eat baby trees. Right, so I would like you to shout out the film that this road was in by listening to the song I'm about to play. So, this is the road that Daniel Craig and Dame Judi Dench drove the gorgeous Aston Martin DB7 along this bridge. You guys can be Dame Judi Dench, I'll make sure I'm Daniel Craig. And you see a lot of people coming up here with Aston Martins just so they can feel like they're James Bond, you know. Last year I saw one of Aston Martin's rare supercars, the Valkyrie, come through here, and what a noise. Crazy. Pretty sure it's electric, it was amazing.
Vamos de volta para a carrinha, acabámos de ver esta vista aqui, brutal, muito fixe.
The left is called a loch because it's a small loch, just a small lake. But you can see this is huge glacial activity that's operated through here, all these big nodules and lumps and bumps, and these rocks just dropped in place. I could assure you that it doesn't look deep because of the rocks there, but that is quite boggy at the bottom of that loch, kind of like quicksand. Usually get quite a lot of people taking photos there in wedding dresses and stuff, you know. So you can actually see Scotland's most southern mountain resort. That is the Glencoe mountain resort there. One of the best parts of it though is that it crosses over a gorgeous waterfall, and in the winter it completely freezes. It's really nice. Get a lot of people doing some ice climbing on it. A sort of valley over there, that is Glen Etive. That is actually where James Bond's family home is supposed to be.
Bem, malta, e o condutor foi simpático, fizemos aqui mais uma paragem e esta estrada aqui apareceu no filme 007 Skyfall, numa das cenas em que eles estavam fora do carro. No entanto, eu nunca vi o filme 007, tenho mesmo que ver, agora que estou aqui na Escócia e a ver onde é que os sítios foram gravados, vou-vos mostrar uma vista 360 graus do sítio onde nós parámos. Então, malta, adorei esta paragem, realmente uma vista muito bonita aqui na Escócia, e vamos voltar para a carrinha porque ainda falta ver muitos mais sítios.
Because this road actually closes in the winter when there's been really bad blizzards or bad snow. That's really well indicated by these snow poles that we've got on the side of the roads, just so people know where they're going. Going down the glen, these ridge lines, is Faith, Hope and Charity. I'm pretty sure I remember those names from a couple of nights out, but hey ho. And it's at the base of Faith that there is the meeting of three waters, which is just three rivers essentially. Two of them make this very large waterfall. There's a much larger waterfall where all three are joined to create, but we can't see it from where we are.
Maltinha, e fizemos aqui mais uma paragem, desta vez para ver esta cascata fantástica. Vejam só que beleza.
Oh my
The Three
god.
Sisters there. And there's a lovely waterfall behind it.
Ali ficou a nossa carrinha, fizemos mais uma paragem para ver esta vista maravilhosa. Esta ponta aqui nós não podemos passar porque a partir dali é propriedade privada. No entanto, a partir daqui conseguimos ver a água. Está um clima frio, nunca tive tão a norte na minha vida. Mas digam lá se a Escócia não é lindíssima. Para mim era rebentarem com o botão do like, subscreverem o canal aqui em baixo e comentarem o que estão a achar do vídeo. Este vlog, se tudo correr bem, vai ser dos melhores vlogs que eu já fiz no canal, portanto acho que merece mesmo o vosso apoio. E ali ao fundo tem uma cascata, como podem ver, por trás da montanha. Malta, é hora de voltarmos para a nossa carrinha, porque ainda temos muita coisa para ver. Hoje o dia promete, vai ser mesmo top, por isso não vais querer perder.
Right hand side of the bus, that is actually the location for Hagrid's house in Harry Potter.
Oh.
So if anybody, I think it was the third one where they travelled back in time, and Hermione and Harry are travelled back in time hiding behind the pumpkins, and they're actually hiding in the trees. And then also the Forbidden Forest is the forest there on the right hand side, all those trees there on the right. It's where Aragog, Buckbeak were all there and all that, on top of a hill there. That's called the Pap of Glencoe, and you can tell a man had named that because it just means breast. It looks a little bit more like a nipple. That's what they're in reference to. It's actually a lovely orbital walk. People usually do it at night time because they get some gorgeous views of the stars. It's very dark here. It's not much light pollution. We are at the back of Ben Nevis. Ben Nevis is the largest peak in the UK, folks. We should get a wee glimpse of him today. We'll just have to hope that the cloud isn't covering the summit. Constantly trying to better one and the other. When they got old enough, one was able to banish the other and exile them from South Ballachulish, leaving the other one stuck over in North Ballachulish. So she was trapped there. So to try and get a little bit of revenge on her sister who'd banished her, she placed a curse on Glencoe. She said that if North Ballachulish and South Ballachulish would ever meet, that Glencoe would flood. If Glencoe floods, we've got bigger fish, bigger problems. That's far too much water. That's a world-ending event in my eyes. Now we fast forward to today's age. Highland Council gets involved and they start to create a plan to build a bridge to cross this area. But the locals get together and they say, no, you can't build a bridge because of the curse, the witch's curse. And the councillor says, what's the curse? And they told them the story and what would happen and the conditions of the curse. And they go, right, okay, we'll need to find a way to keep the locals happy. So they got all these big-brained engineers. Any engineers on board?
No.
Okay. Do you guys work? Does anybody work on this bus?
Yes.
Just me today. So anyway, this doesn't really work to me. This is like a holiday. Yeah. Anyway, as you can see up ahead, there's a bridge, and it's safe to say we've just went through Glencoe, and it hasn't flooded. Either Kyle, the curse is real, or the curse isn't real, or you've just made up a story. Well, I can assure you that the curse is real, and I haven't made up the story, because the big-brained engineers found a contractual grey area in the witch's curse. So the curse is, if North Ballachulish and South Ballachulish would ever meet, that Glencoe would flood. So they purposefully left out some non-structural bolts, meaning the bridge isn't complete, and it's been constructed since the 1970s. Now if you Google Ballachulish Bridge, it says it isn't complete, when obviously we can cross it. I cross this about 2 or 3 times a week, folks, and it's been fine. Now if you look to the right, you'll see Loch Leven. Look to the left, you'll see Loch Linney. It's 2 separate lochs here. One of my favourite views, especially when I'm riding the bike. But every loch that we've saw up until this point has been a freshwater loch.
Isto é lago de água salgada.
Best way to
não
tell.
doce.
So have a wee look to the left, you'll see in the field this standing stone. The farmer now gets paid just to keep the grass cut, which is brilliant. So he just chucks his sheep in it. Glimpse of Ben Nevis. Me and my father are quite into mountain biking, and we went mountain biking on Moor because that is actually a world championship downhill course. Anybody else do any mountain biking? Just me then?
Aqui na Escócia há 3 ovelhas por cada pessoa. Nós realmente vemos muitas ovelhas. Olhem elas ali no prado. Isto é o Loch Loch. Aqui há mesmo muitas ovelhas. Estamos sempre a passar por campos cheios de ovelhas. Até faz impressão como é que é possível.
So, Fort Augustus, the original fort, is directly ahead of us. That opposite side of the fort, the grounds are gorgeous. Lovely walks along Loch Ness. I'm going to give you a wee sneak peek of Loch Ness first, alright, before I park up. Up the left hand side there's a whole range of pubs and restaurants and cafes and gift shops and all that kind of stuff, folks. But this is the canal network that I was telling you about. The Bothy's a weird one, the pub that's closest to us. They close once all the tables have been filled and stop operating food out of their kitchen. It's a weird business option, but that's what they do. You've got a good day to go out in the boat, guys. It's one of the best days I've seen.
Malta, chegamos oficialmente ao Forte Augusto e é daqui que vai sair o barco que vai fazer o passeio pelo Lago Ness. Será que vamos ver o monstro marinho, a Nessi? Se fosse eu a ti, ficava a ver o vídeo porque nunca se sabe se ela vai querer aparecer neste vlog. Aqui fica o barco e eu comprei o meu bilhete ali.
Envolta nas névoas das terras altas da Escócia, encontra-se o enigmático Lago Ness, um conjunto de água velado em sussurros de segredos antigos e profundezas escuras. Dentro do seu abraço sombrio, a superfície muitas vezes não revela nada além de uma quietude misteriosa, como se prendesse a respiração, escondendo os mistérios que habitam abaixo. As histórias sussurradas pelos locais falam de criaturas míticas, com as suas formas obscurecidas pelas águas escuras e misteriosas, num ténue véu entre a realidade e o mito. Aqueles que se atrevem a aventurar perto das suas margens ficam cativados pela sensação de mau presságio que paira no ar, como se a própria essência do lago fosse infundida de uma presença sobrenatural, observando silenciosamente, esperando para revelar os seus segredos para aqueles que ousam procurá-los.
Adeus Fortes Augustos, gostei muito de conhecer, ver o Lago Ness. Acho que ainda vi a ponta da cauda da Nessi. Olhem ali um avestruz.
What a day. It's absolutely fantastic. He's very, very lucky, I must say. So this loch that's here on our left hand side is called Loch Oich. And you may have noticed in Fort Augustus there was a canal network. That was actually purpose built for industry, for ships, for trade to come into Fort Augustus. So rather than going all the way around the north of Scotland, the quite treacherous waters, they thought, well, how about we build a canal network that can allow trade to come straight into the heart of the Highlands. I tell you something, it's a bit of a fallacy, right? Everybody thinks every clan had their own specific tartan. That's not true. You may have had a coloured tartan that a clan would prefer, but it didn't matter. Say for example, this whole bus was all part of Clan Campbell, alright? You wouldn't all be wearing the same uniform, it wouldn't be as militarised, but you probably had similar colours in different types of patterns. You see what I'm saying? So for example, this one here that I'm wearing is very dark and green, right? And there's a flash of sort of straw or yellow through it. Perhaps you might want more yellow, or you might want less green. That's kind of how it was. Didn't mean that he stuck to colours, because he still had different types of tartans throughout clans. So some of you are probably thinking, Lochie means lakey. So you're probably thinking, oh, it's a lakey lake. Well, you'd be wrong. Lochie actually means darkness. So about 2 metres down, you can't see your hand in front of your face underneath that water. So it's very dark, and that's the same for Loch Ness, and it's the reason why everybody thinks Nessie's hiding there. During the winter we had a really low cloud, the sun was just sort of underneath it, just a tiny wee bit, and we had this gorgeous beam of light coming across the loch with a very ominous fog. It was literally about 10 metres above the bus. It was amazing. And then I sat on my phone and deleted the picture, furious.
Vejam só o lago onde nós parámos agora. É o Lago Loki, que significa lago escuro, basicamente porque não dá para ver o fundo. Que beleza, mas que beleza de lago. Muito, muito bonito.
You've been in the military?
No.
Jeez, oh. This is now a running joke, it's not even funny. The Royal Air Force, they do a lot of their low flying training. So if you've ever seen Top Gun, where you've seen them sort of fly through valleys and glens, none of that was filmed here. You usually see quite a lot of aircraft through here. In fact, we've seen a lot of the American F-35s, the brand new ones. The single engine jet, that's a fantastic bit of engineering. In fact, that day where I saw the Globemaster, I was doing a Loch Ness run, and it was flying all over Fort Augustus, so they must have been doing some serious training. And I checked the news that day, and the news was saying about how much Russia had gotten involved in UK airspace, something like 35 times over the past 5 years, and there was a fairly recent one, and I was assuming that that was the Air Force doing a little bit of training, since it had been such a high statistic. Above this coach coming towards us, that's Ben Nevis, and you've got an absolutely clear view of him. In this area, over 300 million years ago, there was a huge glacial movement up and down this area about 6 or 7 times, and it just constantly freezed and thawed, and it left this big huge ice cream scoop out of the landscape. 3 of them.
Esta vila aqui chama-se Spin Bridge. Porque o rio chama-se Spin e tem uma ponte.
Has anybody ever seen the film Into the Wild?
Yes.
Fantastic film. It's my favourite film. What a life to live by. In fact, it's based on a true story. For those of you that haven't heard of it, I would recommend watching it. It is such a humbling, fantastic film of adventure for a young lad who clearly has a lot on his shoulders. I'm pretty sure he graduates from an Ivy League college. His mother and father are involved quite high up. I think his dad worked for NASA or something like that, but he goes by a pseudonym called Alexander Supertramp, which is just brilliant. What a name. But he essentially just goes and lives off the land, and his plan is to get to Alaska and once again get away from society and just live within his means, and it's phenomenal.
Aqui temos a barragem Lago. Como podem ver, de um lado a água está super em cima e do outro está muito, muito lá em baixo. E epá, sem palavras para esta vista. Vejam só que vista brutal. Eu sinceramente acho que até já estou a perder a sensibilidade, porque já vi tantas vistas lindas hoje que até faz impressão. Mas realmente, olhem o reflexo das nuvens na água. Está aqui um cenário de sonho.
So just up ahead, folks, is the wee point for us to have a wee look at the Highland cows.
E como é que é, pessoal? Gonçalo Carvalho na área, e estamos aqui mais uma vez numa paragem muito bonita aqui da Escócia, porque vocês vão ver algo que eu ainda não vos mostrei até agora. Além destas montanhas e este cenário de sonho, temos ali vacas. Vamos ver muitas vacas lá ao fundo. E vejam só, chegamos aqui ao pé delas e são um estilo de vacas muito diferentes daquelas que estamos habituados em Portugal. Estas parece que têm mais pelo, o que também faz sentido, tendo em conta que aqui é uma região muito mais fria, por isso... são uma raça diferente. E vejam só o tamanho daqueles cornos ali. Mesmo enormes. Essa vaca aqui é bebê. Vejam só, tem os cornos muito mais pequenos que as outras. Estes aqui já são as vacas adultas. Sendo que originalmente elas tinham todos o pelo preto e têm um pelo muito mais espesso que as vacas mais a sul. Mas depois foi introduzida esta outra espécie com o pelo mais castanho.
So this up ahead is actually a rural cinema. As you can see, it extends out to the side. And it's for all these sort of rural places, and you can follow them on Facebook and they tell you where they're going to be next, and they'll put on some kind of cool film or something. It's brilliant.
Wow.
I know that sounds really weird, but like for us, that's an amazing wee experience. For some of these rural communities, they don't really have, you know, access to a cinema or to the city to go and experience that. This band is huge, by the way, just to let you know. At this time of day, there's quite a large migration path for deer.
Oh, there's a deer. Ali dois viados.
So the cool thing about their mating season, right? They're quite aggressive, especially if you get an early in the morning little run up to Glencoe, and you've got the sun behind them, and you just see them breathing out just their breath in the cold air. It looks so cool. It's like the epitome of Scotland. That brings us perfectly to Pelotri.
Malta, parámos aqui num sítio que tem gelado de whisky. Vou querer provar para ver se é realmente bom. Malta, entrei lá dentro e vou provar agora o gelado de whisky. Vejam só como é que ele é. É muito bom, sabe um bocado a álcool. Claramente tem whisky aqui. Vale a pena.
Obviously, the further north you go, the better. Getting access to those solar rays. But in the summertime, the chances of seeing them is much lower. It's better when it's colder temperatures. We don't get it as vivid as like Iceland and other sort of Norwegians and parts of North America as well. We don't get it as vivid as that. I once, my friend, in a little village called Comrie, and it's brilliant for stargazing or seeing the Aurora Borealis because there's not any light pollution. The village is very dim. So yeah, the light pollution is essentially your enemy. If you can get as far away from major cities and out into the countryside as you can, then more vibrant that kind of stuff happens. But we do get it. Usually our news will tell us that we're expecting a high, I think it's a KT rating. The highest I've seen it, where I've been able to see the Aurora Borealis, was 8 KT. So if you're up and above that, you should be able to see it. Is Victoria Street, just up from Grassmarket, is actually what inspired J.K. Rowling to create Diagon Alley. Right folks, I'm going to do one last wee thing for our tour. We're coming to the end of it. Aww, you all did. Oh, that was nice. I'm going to play a wee song, alright, because if I start talking I'll get emotional. But I'm going to play a wee song, just sums up our trip a little bit, and it's kind of a song that we play at most of our sort of big do's like weddings and birthdays. We usually play it. Most artists in Scotland have covered it. He covers the song Caledonia, and it's a real sort of heartwarming tearjerker kind of song, so if you do cry, don't be embarrassed, it's okay. But he's also playing this song live in one of my favourite gig spaces, the Garage in Glasgow.
I don't know, you can see changes I have come over me. These last few days, I've been afraid that I might drift away, that I think about you all day.
Malta, estou completamente extasiado. Adorei este tour. Já tinha expectativas lá em cima, mas sinceramente superou ainda mais. Como vocês puderam ver neste vlog que eu fiz, foi muito bacana. Espero mesmo do fundo do coração que vocês tenham adorado estes vlogs. Se gostaram, rebentam com o botão do like, comentem aqui em baixo o que acharam do vídeo e subscrevam o canal para não perderem novidades futuras. Daqui foi Gonçalo Carvalho. Vemo-nos no próximo vídeo.